The village of Vorden lay hidden deep within the Greywood Forest, a place shrouded in mystery and silence. For centuries, it had been cut off from the rest of the world, its people living simple lives, tending to the land and honoring the ancient trees that surrounded them. The villagers believed the forest was alive, not just in the way that all forests are, but in a deeper, more profound sense. The silent grove, at the heart of the forest, was the source of its magic. No one dared enter the silent grove. The elders spoke of it in hushed tones, warning the young ones never to go near. It was said that anyone who ventured into the grove never returned, their voices taken by the trees, their bodies consumed by the earth. The people of Vorden respected the forest's power and had lived in peace with it for generations. But as with all things, peace does not last forever. In the autumn of the village's 13th century, strange things began to happen. The crops withered under an unyielding sun. The river that ran through the village dried to a trickle, and the forest itself began to change. The trees that had once been vibrant and full of life grew twisted and dark, their leaves falling away to reveal gnarled, blackened branches. The animals that roamed the woods became scarce, and those that remained were sickly and hostile. The people of Vorden were afraid, but they knew what needed to be done. They would send someone to the silent grove to seek answers. It was a desperate decision, but they had no choice. The village could not survive much longer if the forest continued to decay. The one chosen for this task was a young woman named Elira. She was quiet, unassuming, but there was a strength in her that the elders had seen when she was a child. Elira had always felt a deep connection to the forest, more so than anyone else in the village. While others feared its shadows and the silence that fell over it at dusk, Elira found comfort in its stillness. She was the obvious choice, though it was a choice no one envied. Elira accepted her task without complaint, though her heart trembled with fear. She knew the stories, knew what the silent grove could do to those who entered it. But she also knew that if something wasn't done, Vorden would die, and the forest with it. Early one morning, as the mist still clung to the ground and the first light of dawn pierced the canopy, Elira set off into the Greywood. She carried nothing but a small pack of provisions and a lantern, though she doubted she would need either. The silent grove lay to the north, a day's walk from the village, but it was a place outside of time and space. No one knew how long it would take to reach it, or if she would return. The deeper she walked into the forest, the more the trees seemed to close in around her. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of dead leaves underfoot, or the soft creak of the wind in the branches above. Elira felt the weight of the forest pressing down on her, as if the trees themselves were watching, waiting. By midday, the sun had disappeared behind thick clouds, and a cold wind began to blow through the woods. Elira pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders and pressed on, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. The path she followed was overgrown, nearly invisible, but she knew she was heading in the right direction. She could feel it, a pull deep within her that guided her steps. As the hours passed, the trees became taller, their trunks wider and more twisted. The air grew colder still, and the silence deepened. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. Elira's heart pounded in her chest, her pulse loud in her ears. She had never been this far from the village before, and the sense of isolation was overwhelming. Finally, As dusk began to fall, Elira reached the edge of the silent grove. It was exactly as the stories had described. A perfect circle of trees, their trunks black and twisted, their branches bare. The ground was covered in a thick layer of dead leaves, and no sound could be heard within the grove. Not the rustle of wind, not the call of a bird. Nothing. It was as if the very air had been swallowed by the earth. Elira stood at the edge of the grove for a long moment, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. She could feel the power of the place, a deep, ancient magic that thrummed beneath her feet. This was the heart of the forest, the source of its life and now its decay. She stepped forward. As soon as her foot touched the ground within the grove, the temperature plummeted. Her breath became visible in the air, and her skin prickled with cold. The silence was so complete it pressed against her ears, making her feel as though she were underwater. Elira took another step, and then another, until she stood in the center of the grove. In the center of the circle was a tree unlike any other in the forest. It was massive, its trunk as wide as a house, its bark black as coal. Its branches reached up to the sky, though they were bare, and at its base, a large crack split the trunk open like a wound. Inside, there was darkness, pure, impenetrable darkness. Elira knew instinctively that this was where the answers lay. She took a deep breath and stepped closer to the tree, her heart racing. The air around her felt thick, heavy with the weight of magic. She reached out a hand and touched the bark. It was cold, colder than ice, and as soon as her fingers made contact, a voice echoed in her mind. "Why have you come?" Elira gasped, pulling her hand back. The voice was deep, ancient, and filled with a sadness that made her heart ache. I've come to find out what's happening to the forest," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The village is dying. The trees are withering. The animals are gone. We don't know what to do." There was a long silence, and then the voice spoke again, softer this time. "The balance has been broken." Elira frowned. "What do you mean? How?" "The forest is alive, as you know," the voice said. "But it is not just alive. It is connected to the magic of the world. The silent grove is the heart of that magic, the place where the threads of life are woven. For centuries, the balance has been maintained, but now the threads are unraveling." "Unraveling?" Elira repeated. "Why? What caused it?" There was another pause, and then the voice said, "Greed, hatred. The world beyond the forest is filled with it. The people of the village have lived in harmony with the forest, but the world beyond has forgotten the old ways. They have poisoned the land, drained the magic from the earth. The silent grove can no longer hold back the decay." Elira felt a wave of despair wash over her. "Then, is there nothing we can do?" "There is a way," the voice said, "but it comes at a great cost." Elira swallowed hard. "What cost?" "The silent grove needs a guardian, someone to bind themselves to the magic, to restore the balance and protect the forest. But in doing so, they must give up their life. They will become part of the forest, forever silent, forever watching." Elira's heart pounded in her chest. She knew, deep down, that this was why she had been chosen. The elders had known, perhaps not consciously, But they had felt it. The forest had called her here for this purpose. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "I'll be the guardian." There was a long silence, and then the voice said, "You are brave, child. Step into the tree, and the forest will accept your sacrifice." Elira took a deep breath and stepped forward, into the crack in the tree. As soon as she entered the darkness, the cold faded, replaced by a warmth that enveloped her like a blanket. She felt the magic of the forest flow through her, filling her with a sense of peace and purpose. And then there was silence. The next morning, the people of Vorden awoke to find the forest restored. The trees were green and full of life. The river flowed once more, and the animals had returned. The village was saved, but Elira was gone. They searched for her for days, but there was no trace of her anywhere in the forest. Only the silent grove remained, untouched and undisturbed. From that day on, the villagers spoke of a new guardian, one who watched over the forest in silence, ensuring that the balance was maintained. And though they never saw her again, they knew that Elira had become one with the forest, her sacrifice ensuring that Vorden would live on. The silent grove was silent no more.